right, everyone, I'm going to begin speaking. You can keep filing in here. If you're having trouble hearing over my voice, that's probably because you should be making your way to one of the talks. My name again is Mickey Mullen. I am emceeing portions of this Liberty Forum. Our next speaker in Camelot Court is Jeffery Tucker, the founder and president of the Brownstone Institute, and the author of many thousands of articles in the scholarly and popular press, 10 books in 5 languages, most recently Liberty or Lockdown. He's also the editor of the Best of Mises. He has a pretty fiery Twitter account, speaks widely on topics of economics, technology, social philosophy, and culture. Please put your hands together for Jeffery Tucker.
Well, that's really embarrassing to be introduced with the reality that I have a Twitter account. Makes you wonder what I'm doing wrong. I've not been banned. I've not even achieved any warnings at all. So I don't know. I keep getting more fiery all the time. Sometimes I think they let me post just because they want to accumulate a record. You know, that's what I'm saying. So keep the paper trail going. I got a notification just before I came up here that another one of my interviews was blocked by YouTube. So I'm doing something right, you know. If you don't get blocked, you wonder what you're doing. How much did I accidentally echo CDC propaganda or something? It was a profound error. Look, I'm really glad to be here, and for me, it's a special day because this is the 10th anniversary of my first Liberty Forum, which, you know, I remember that conference so well because, and I'm not sure this will resonate with you too much, but for me personally, I was always a writer, an intellectual, an editor, but pretty isolated in what I had mostly believed to be, in retrospect, an intellectual game. You know, sort of sword fighting over ideas, and it was fun, and I liked it. But it wasn't until that Liberty Forum that I had a profound sense of the reality that human rights and liberty really matter in our own lives in a very, very big and profound and personal way. And what I found in New Hampshire at that very first event was, you know, hundreds and hundreds of people that take liberty so seriously that they're trying to figure out how to live a freer life. And that revelation really changed everything for me. I went from being I guess, you know, just like a pure intellectual to realizing that there would come a time in life where liberty would really mean the difference between whether we can live in civilization or experience unrelenting despotism. Before we're serfs and slaves and living in servitude, or whether or not we can actually make choices and get along with our fellows and freedom and experience human rights. It was the Liberty Forum that helped me realize that, and it was very exciting to me, and it kind of gave me a new boost on life, you know, as a writer and intellectual. And that's what I've been doing the last 10 years, is trying to figure out practical ways to get from a state of despotism to a state of liberty, and what that means, how to be effective. Well, the last 2 years have shown us just how profound this insight really is. I'm not sure. Is this thing working really well? Is it stable and fine? Okay. I'm not sure. Well, I'm actually certain of this, that until 2 years ago, we were not aware of just how much in the balance our rights and liberties were hanging there. I mean, it really was just one day to the next. And I'm sure everyone in this room has a story about that day when you realized that the darkness had fallen. If you didn't experience that, that's great. But for me, I really did. That first day when the sun didn't really rise, for me, emotionally or psychologically, was March 13th. And that was the day after Trump's big announcement that he was stopping all flights from Europe and the UK and Australia. in the name of controlling a virus that was already here, right? And I didn't know the president had that kind of power. I had no idea. I didn't, yeah, he doesn't. Well, he does. He does and he doesn't. And I didn't know that anything like that would ever be deployed. I had just taken for granted the idea that, you know, you can travel where you want, that was a human right. That's been the world that we've all lived in. And my parents and their parents before them, we've all taken this for granted. Then one day it just stopped. And it was a profound realization that all the freedoms we take for granted are there only and to the extent that government approves of them. And that's not the kind of world I want to live in. Are you sure the mic works? There. Yeah, so it was a shock, and then it kept getting worse. That was Thursday, and I was coming back from New York, I think, and I had a fear on Amtrak that the train could be stopped, and that everybody in the train would be put on a special car and taken to a COVID detention camp, something like that. It sounds crazy. Actually, that wasn't crazy. That could have happened. The CDC, even now, says on its website that they can do this to you if the Surgeon General wants them to do that to you. That power, or the words on the CDC website have been there for at least 16 years. And everybody's just dismissed it. I mean, 16 years ago, I was warning people about this. Do you have any idea what kind of quarantine power the federal government presumes to have for itself? Look at what these words say. Everybody was ignoring it. Oh, it doesn't matter. That'll never happen. Well, it did happen. The darkness fell. They attempted something insane. And they persisted for fully 2 years. And I'll tell you something else. I get a little fed up, actually, these days, because everybody says, oh, the pandemic's over. Yeah, okay, maybe. I don't know. Deaths per million by COVID are higher now than they were in the summer of 2020 when we were fully locked down. So, I don't know. The pandemic, is it over? I don't know. But now, because the politics have changed, everything's opening up, right? And that's the only thing that's really changed, but not really opening up. I got a letter this morning from a New York City teacher who's been teaching for 25 years, who's about to be fired because she won't get her second vaccine. Because she actually had the vaccine, of course, got COVID, got over it, now has natural immunity, doesn't want to get the second shot because she's got stronger protection than she really needs anyway. And so she's going to get fired. She's pleading. She says this is all coming down for her next week, and she's desperate to find some doctor somewhere that can sign a note for her. Not that it's going to make any difference. I'm not aware of any medical exemptions that New York City has given. So you've got the mayor now running around saying, oh, we should open up, everything could be fine. And the New York Times is saying, oh, COVID is over in New York City. No, the mandate for the employees still exists. Who's going to stand up for the tens of thousands, the hundreds of thousands of firemen, policemen, city workers, nurses, people? The stories, that are coming over my inbox are truly tragic. And if something like this had happened 2 or 3 years ago, we would all just be outraged. I mean, there would be public outrage about this. But now, because we've experienced stay-at-home orders, they shut our churches, they shut the schools, they shut all the small businesses, and destroyed everything, wreckage all over the country, we figure, well, at least we got a few rights back. Let's move on and talk about the evils of Putin or whatever, right? That's what's going on. So the problem is not over. Are we doing this again? I think it lasts for like 10 minutes and then... There. Oh, okay. Huh. Yeah, so my friends, we can't relax. And 2 years ago, or I guess it was May of 2 years ago, I knew that everything had changed in our lives. I mean, that nothing would ever be the same for the rest of our lives after this despotism befell us, after what a shock that has been. And later on, I'm going to get to all the ways in which I think things have fundamentally changed and how that changes our intellectual outlook and what we have to do for the future. I founded the Brownstone Institute because I felt like we needed something completely new. A completely new way to think, about human liberty and our rights in the future, especially as it pertains. There we go. Okay. Especially as it pertains to issues of public health. Something went very wrong. The fact that most of the public could get so easily bamboozled by the appearance, by the realization that we're surrounded by pathogens. You know, that viruses exist. Oh my God, we better get rid of all freedom, all right? Unbelievable that this actually happened to us. So I've spent the better part of 2 years trying to take apart. Do you think my voice is loud enough? I'm not so sure. I've spent the better part of 2 years trying to figure out exactly what happened to us and and we're nowhere near understanding. I think I understand about 5%, you know, and I think I've written more than anybody else on this topic, exactly when it is that Trump decided to lock things down, exactly what Fauci's role was in all this, Birx, what happened at the CDC. But every day, new information is coming out about this. Wow, it's always so tempting, right? It's like the way the government treats your rights. Oh, you've got them. No, you don't. You've got them. No, you don't. Okay. Okay, we're playing with the volume now, or what's happening?
Just turning off this one.
Okay, good. All right. So, what was...
I'm in the middle of the hall.
So what was happening 2 years ago on March 4th? Strange stuff, right? So Fauci and Birx and Jeremy Farrar in Britain had spent the better part of a month trying to figure out what they're going to do about this pathogen that had come from China. And they, you know, were pretty sure, Farrar says 80% sure that it had come from a lab. So from January 30th, all these people are spending their lives on burner phones and clandestine conversations with each other and not recording anything, not sending emails to each other. What were they trying to do? They were scared that there was a virus that had been made in a lab that was coming from Wuhan, possibly deliberately, although they didn't know for sure, possibly in retaliation for Trump's tariff war against China. And Fauci and Farrar and Collins at NIH were pretty sure that it all traces to their own funding of gain-of-function research. So they were very, very worried about this because they figured that they were going to be all blamed for starting World War III, a kind of biochemical war. And they each warned their families. Actually, this is all in Farrar's book, by the way. Okay. Okay. Although I'm enjoying this. So Farrar reports this in his book, that they all told their families that if they woke up dead, that this was the reason. They thought they were going to be off. I mean, this is cray-cray stuff, you know? These people have lost their minds. I don't know. You know, so I don't have a position on the gain-of-function research, whether it was a lab leak or not. I don't really know. Maybe it was. But what matters is they believed it was, and they acted as if they were all in deep trouble. Now, this began January 30th with their meetings and their discussions. The paper proving that it wasn't a lab leak, the first draft came out February 4th. 3 days after the first meeting, right? And the guys who signed the paper were all in the phone call, so it was a complete phony, a big fakearoo. And the New York Times, you know, the New York Times didn't report anything about it then. For the good dominant part of February, what they did was plot the lockdowns. Right? They didn't know what to do, and the only thing they could think to do was the lockdowns. Now, as far as I understand the situation, now why the lockdowns? We can discuss this, and you know, my own opinion is that there was no plan and that locking down is the best plan they had. That Fauci actually doubted that it would work to suppress the virus. But what else are you gonna do? I think that was Fauci's and Ferrar's position, and Collins too. Because for 15 years there had been a school of thought out there that if we just lock everybody down and we shut all the schools. Test. Wow. And although that was nice, wasn't it? Yeah. Okay. So now I'm going to be boring. If we just shut everybody down and separate everybody, then the virus gets bored and goes into early retirement. And I never understood these guys. I was inveighing against lockdowns, and I got this call from, I can never remember his name, but he used to be with the Gates Foundation. He was actually the innovator of lockdown ideas under the George Bush administration. I can never remember his name, Rajiv something. Anyway, and kind of a big shot. And he called me up and he said, yeah, you really need to stop denouncing lockdowns. Lockdowns are great. And I said, well, it's not clear to me why we're doing this. And he said, well, we're just going to drive the R naught, that's the rate of infection rate, the rate at which one infected person is going to infect other people. Is it above 1, lower than 1? If it's lower than 1, the virus dies out of it. And he says, we're just going to drive the infection rate lower than 1, and then the virus dies out. And I said, well, when you say dies out, does it mean like it disappears? Because I mean, like every virus that's ever existed still exists. So, what's going to happen here? And I kept asking him this question, and he could never give me a full answer. It was very strange the way he thought that somehow the ex post measuring device could be turned into a causal element on the front end. This is like saying, I don't know, if you open your umbrella, then the rain will start or something. I'm not sure what the right analogy is there, but it's a very strange kind of mechanistic view of the relationship between the existence of a pandemic and the infection rate. So anyway, I was on the phone with him for almost an hour, and he was begging me to stop talking about this, which, if you think about it, this is actually very important. I'm sure he didn't just call me. He must have called, others, all 6 people in the world who were against lockdowns, probably, to get us to shut up. That's what they wanted, because they wanted uniformity of opinion. Anyway, the point is that for the good part of February, this is what was going on. They were trying to figure out how to convince the world to lock down. The biggest problem they had was, of course, Trump himself. How do we get Trump to destroy the economy that he believes he created? How do we get him to be his own worst enemy? That's a trick, right? I don't know. Sounds like the movie Inception or something like that. Maybe they did that to him. So I have a slightly fake scenario in my head in which these guys are all sitting around with a couple of political consultants and saying, look, what is it? Tell me about Trump. Well, he'll probably issue a big draconian order because he likes to be a big shot. It's kind of an authoritarian way about him. If we convince that he can be a hero by being the first president, the first leader in the history of the world to stamp out a virus, that's good. He'll go for that. And then somebody else might pipe up and say, something funny about that guy. Every time I see him going to dinner, he's always carrying a bottle of Purell. He's terrified of germs. He's a germaphobe. So let's combine these two things and convince him that it's only for a short duration. Shut down the economy for 2 weeks, and then turn it back on again. The virus goes away, and there'll be a big party, which is almost exactly the words that he said to the press on March 16th, that's what he would do. So they spent that entire weekend telling him this, that cases were up, cases are bad, we got to get rid of cases, this is the worst China import ever. I mean, the fireworks are bad enough, steel, all that stuff's awful, but the virus is from Wuhan. We have to block. Well, Trump went for it, and the whole world was trolled. Burke said at her March 16th press conference, these people. She said, look. This is very deep into the press conference. She said, let me just summarize what we're trying. What we're trying to say is we need everybody to be separate from everybody else. Just separate yourself. It's pretty simple. And the press was like, oh, interesting point. Okay. What, a new social system in which nobody can be around anybody else? And they actually tried to enforce this. Stickers, plexiglass, stay-at-home orders, blocking and the whole thing was utter insanity, and the world went along with it. Absolutely crazy. It took the better part of a month to hammer out this plan. And the very first people that were embroiled into it was, of course, the media and the New York Times. And I think last time I was here, maybe it was at PorcFest, I talked about this, but on February 28th, the New York Times ran an article by Donald J. McNeil called "To Take on the Coronavirus, Go Medieval" on it. And he contrasted two ways of dealing with disease. One, he called traditional public health, in which when the new pathogen arrives, the medical specialists get to work trying to figure out what it's made of, who's vulnerable to it, mitigate the disease, work on therapeutics, make sure that people can get to their doctors and they can get well, and then achieve herd immunity and endemicity, and then it becomes manageable and we go on. He said that's one way. That's not going to work with this virus. What we really need to do is lock people in their disease-ridden cities, block travel, shut down the highways and the planes, shut down the businesses and the schools. And this is his words. And the New York Times on February 28th, when I read that, I thought, holy, the New York Times is not going to publish something. This is their lead virus reporter saying this stuff. I knew the dark days were coming. And then, of course, 2 weeks later, it all hit us, and it was all terrible. Well, anyway, we're sitting among the wreckage right now, and people want to not talk about it, but my God, 2 years of lost education from children, a whole generation masked up, the amount of speech problems that children have developed, the language difficulties, the disabilities, the missed cancer screenings, the demoralization. Just the realization that it can all be taken away from us. I mean, the suicide ideation, I'm sure you know people in your own lives who have called you. And by the way, congratulations for being a survivor, right? I mean, it was not easy, was it? 2 very difficult years, and a lot of people didn't make it. Excess deaths are very high, and the tragedies are all around us, and we're nowhere near done with it. We're not done with the mandates. They're still affecting lives all over the place. I have a friend who's I'll just tell you, it's just so sad. A friend of mine is an economics professor, a black man in Canada, who doesn't want the vaccine. He's not going to get it. Neither does his wife, and neither do his children who are in their 20s. All 4 of them are being fired from their jobs. All 4. They're all being left destitute, right? He's desperately looking for some job that he can get, any job, slinging burgers, anything, where he doesn't have to be vaccinated. And he sent me this tragic note. This is a highly accomplished scholar, a tenured associate professor, and one of the few black economists in all of Canada. And he and his family are being completely left destitute. And this has gone on all over this country. A lot of these mandates being repealed. Are they hiring people back? Are they hiring back the teachers, the nurses, the doctors, the professors? No, they're not going to hire them back. It's just an outrage. And it still goes on. And we want to forget about it because it was such a trauma, but we can't forget about it. It's a trauma of our lives, and it's changed everything. Okay. When I say it's changed everything, let me make sure I've covered everything. Oh, one other thing that happened this morning. The CDC director, Walensky, her, said that in a casual conversation, in a casual, almost unguarded way, said that it's true that they got a little confused about the vaccines. It's true. She said, but I got so excited when CNN reported 95% effectiveness. I thought, great, let's mandate everybody get this, and then we'll be over it. And then she went on to say, nobody asked the question how long the effectiveness of the vaccine would last. Nobody asked that question. And nobody asked whether the vaccine was going to pertain to future mutations of the virus. Nobody asked that question. Okay. I asked that question. A lot of my friends asked that question. They got banned by Twitter. They got shut down by Facebook. Facebook signed up to be an organ of control for the CDC. Big tech went in with big government completely on this to operate as propaganda. And yet they were completely wrong. Completely wrong. And in fact, if Walensky had just read the EUA, the Emergency Use Authorization Report that Pfizer and Moderna themselves had submitted, she would have known that they never promised it was going to stop infection or even slow infection. They never promised that it was going to stop the spread or even reduce transmission. They didn't promise anything like that. Or that would work against all the future mutations. Oh, by the way, coronaviruses mutate, which you can learn from reading Cell Biology for Dummies, which you can download from Amazon, okay? With Walensky can't be bothered to do that. All the EUA promised was protection limited, 7 days, I think was the actual date, against severe outcomes, okay? It lasts a lot longer than 7 days. It's probably 2 months, 3 months, something like that. I don't know. But the main thing that comes out of this interview with Walensky is that she was getting her medical information from CNN. Unbelievable. They're not the experts. The experts have failed us. The loss of trust in this country for public health, government, media, the courts, where the hell were they? Took them 2 years, lazy bastards. I despise what the courts have done to us. I mean, they should have just blocked all this. They should have started acting on March 8th when they first canceled South by Southwest in Austin by decree of the mayor. There should have been an injunction, an arrest of that mayor or something. Something should have happened. What a disaster. Everything has failed. And on one hand, I've got an anarchist way about myself, and I'm sort of delighted by this, yay. On the other hand, trust is essential for a well-functioning society. When people lose trust in literally everything, that can unleash some real beasts on the world. And we can be in a scary place. And so we really need to be thinking about rebuilding. So I want to talk I don't have that much time left, but I want to talk about the lessons I've learned from this and how it's affected my life so profoundly. First of all, I didn't realize just how much it matters when you live in a society with radical disparities in class structure. In my entire intellectual life, I associated class analysis with like Marxism or something like that. I didn't realize just how dangerous it is when you've got a thin group of people at the top who have completely lost touch with anything remotely resembling real work, that they really thought that their own personal experience, which is that they love sitting around in their pajamas on Zoom and talking to their friends, was a universal experience and that everybody could just do that, right? So, and they just, the lack of empathy. I remember watching the governor of Massachusetts just give the backhand to a restaurant owner who just ran up to him on the streets and said, "Governor, I have to open my restaurant. I mean, you're destroying my life." And he said, he pointed a finger at him. He said, "Restaurants are a casualty of the pandemic. Get out of my face." Right? Complete lack of empathy. I mean, the devil was really unleashed on the world. These people are grotesque. But it's a class difference. I mean, so what really happened during the lockdowns was not that everybody was locked down. It was that the Zoom class, the professional class, the ruling class, designed a whole world in which they would get protected from the clean people would be protected from the pathogen, and that the dirty people and the workers and the peasants would get out there and expose themselves to the virus, and that they would bear the burden of herd immunity, not them, they, you know? And every day you read the national press, they told you what to do. Stay home and get your groceries delivered. Well, who's the national press written for? Not the people delivering groceries, just those who are staying home, right? So nothing made me more furious than the slogan, stay home, stay safe, because it's bullshit. I mean, the virus was transmitted most readily in New York in the early days, mostly at home. That was the most commonplace. But worse than that, it was a disgusting disregard for the poor and the working classes in this country, who bore the burden in the early days of the Alpha variant. It was they, as the minorities, who suffered the most, and the aged, who were not protected at all. Anyway, what do we do about the class problem? One is we need an opportunity society, more freedom for people to be mobile. And that lack of class mobility has really profoundly affected our politics. The upper class are so terrified out of falling out of that realm of privilege, they figure that they'll never get back into it, so they're fighting with everything they have to keep it at everybody else's expense. And it's disgusting, and it's got to be fixed. The Zoom class in this country has really nearly destroyed everything. So I think we as liberty-minded people need to start thinking more profoundly about class and the urgency of creating more mobility. And that comes with freedom. You know, that comes with freedom. How many of you in this room have started your own business from soup to nuts? Yeah, okay. It's hell. It is hell. Just hiring one employee, just getting the licenses, just getting to paying the taxes, the compliance with the third-party plugins. It's unbelievably expensive. At Brownstone Institute, I've spent 40% of my time on compliance issues. And this is just with a nonprofit. So this has got to be fixed. I don't know what the Republicans are going to do once they get in office. They're going to suck, but as they always do. But okay, that's one thing. Class matters. Second thing, left and right doesn't matter anymore. I just don't believe it. Most of the people who write for Brownstone Institute, the predominant number of these people are disaffected leftists. They've been disgusted. They were drawn to the left because of a belief in equality and democracy and human rights and freedom and civil liberties and this kind of stuff. Their compatriots abandoned them and, for the most part, went full totalitarian. Read Mother Jones, read The Nation. They're basically Stalinist publications at this point. The left is utterly corrupt, but there's so many refugees from that side, and a lot of them are coming to Brownstone writing for us. And I don't pay attention to people's political loyalties at all when I get articles, because everything has changed. As for the right, why was the right so silent for so long? Why did National Review favor the lockdowns? Why were they quiet for a good part of a year and a half? Yeah. Well, Trump was the one who did it, right? And so they had to kind of cover up for him because it was Trump that pulled the trigger initially. It's just part of the reality. Another thing that really has shocked me, and I think it's something that probably you've thought it through entirely, but I don't think I fully understood the codependent relationship between big tech, big business, and big government. They have worked together with one side cheering on the other side, you know? When I think about Amazon, for example, well, they benefited greatly during the pandemic. Good for them. You know, I'm glad to click and get their stuff in the mail. It's wonderful. God bless them. But there's a slight problem. Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post. The Washington Post aggressively argued for the destruction of the working class and small businesses in this country. You want to talk about excess deaths? Let's talk about excess deaths of small businesses. More than 200,000 of them were destroyed. There were moments in 2020 we could drive almost to any town in America, small town in America, and see that half or more of the businesses were shuttered, closed, destroyed. I don't know. Amazon benefits, small business loses. I am personally in favor of reparations for small business in this country. Reparations, Yeah. I think this is a priority for Republicans. But by that I mean they need to be exempt from all FICA regulations and all taxes for the good part of 10, 20 years or something like that. Any business with fewer than 1,000 employees. It's just a matter of justice. Something needs to happen. You cannot have a vibrant commercial society without a vibrant sector of small business. I don't care. Big business is entirely allied with government. That's just a fact, and we have to recognize that. Okay, that's 3 points. So the fourth point is a little bit abstract, and I think maybe I've talked about this in the past. And we're going to open up for questions. There has been an implicit social contract with regard to infectious diseases that we have complied with for several hundred years. Nobody made the deal. It's endogenous. It's not overt. Nobody signed anything, but it's something we've accepted, which is that we're going to live in a world of pathogens, a world of infectious diseases. We're going to gather here together, even though some of us may be spreading a pathogen to somebody else, in exchange for which we're going to get universal freedom and human rights. We're going to do both of those things together. That social contract is extremely important for a society of equality and democracy, because if we don't have that social contract, that agreement to pursue equality with each other in the presence of infectious diseases, we do what they did in the ancient world, which is that in the slavocracies of the 19th century America and in many social systems around the world, which is to codify and erect a system of the clean and the unclean. The upper class stays free of pathogen, and everybody else is used as sandbags to continue to protect them. This is what happened when you read in the Bible. This is what was going on with Jesus and the lepers. If you look at this, one of the reasons he scandalized everybody was he met with the lepers, he ate with the lepers, he healed the lepers, which is to say he used his rabbinical powers to declare them clean. He wasn't supposed to do that. They eventually killed him for it, because a lot of societies in our history have been set up with these castes based on clean and unclean. And that's exactly what they did to us in this country with the vaccinated and the unvaccinated. Appalling. Where you have the President of the United States basically inviting violence against the unvaccinated. Pandemic of the unvaccinated. Oh, you're going to live a dark, deadly winter. You have to lose your jobs, and so on and so on. It was grotesque. Yeah, the New York Times said we should go medieval. That is medieval, and it's disgusting. We have to change that attitude. I'm just going to add a little slight footnote here. Some, I would say, excessively, well, let me put this. There are some libertarian thinkers out there who are very confused about this subject, very confused. They think that passing on a cold is an act of aggression, and therefore the state needs to stop. Anyway, I'm not going to talk about that because I think it makes me so angry. All right, the fifth point, liberty. It's so fragile. Did we know? I'm not sure we knew. We've always liked it. We've tried to live it. We want more of it. But did we know that it could all be taken away in an instant like that? I don't want to live in that kind of society. We cannot. Nobody can. No matter your politics, your religion, your race, your language, your nationality, it doesn't matter. You have to have freedom. And that's the most urgent priority we have. It's going to consume the rest of our lives. We need dramatic legal changes. We need dramatic social changes, cultural changes, everything. We as a nation, as a world, need to fall in love again with the idea of human liberty, and we need to develop the courage to defend it at all cost. It's the most important thing. We got to get that right. We didn't have it right before. Something had happened where the foundation of civilization had fallen beneath our feet, and we didn't even know it. We woke up one day, and it was all gone. My friends, thanks for fighting this great fight. I'm out of time, but I'm here all day. Thank you so much.
Fortunately, there were no technical difficulties during that. That would have been embarrassing. Thank you very much, Jeffrey. Did you want to take questions? All right. And there are questions, so this is going to work out well. I'm actually going to do a two-microphone Monty here. All right, so this is going to be yours. You're going to have to stay tethered over there.
All right.
And then if you have a question, I'm going to ask you to come over to the right-hand side here. My right, your left. And we have some time, but for everyone's benefit, please be relatively brief with your question.
And I'll try to be brief, too.
I won't hold you to it. Please give your name and a succinct question for Jeffrey. Thanks.
My name's Karen Burkhardt. I'm a child and adolescent psychiatrist. I'm a refugee from New York. I've been in the trenches. It's not a question so much as a comment. Being in New York, really in the belly of the beast, and dealing with children and families, it became very apparent to me from day one that our liberty loss was not an accident. And not to contend your position, but I must say that in the awareness of Event 201 in 2019, October, it was not an accident that we locked down. It was not an accident that the entire world locked down in lockstep at the same time. That never happens. There were some of us who were very aware. We started in the fall of 2020 having lobbies and rallies in New York City. In the beginning, nobody would talk to us. They were so terrified. The fear-mongering was horrible. And people were literally being killed in our hospitals because of policies set forth by the CDC. And doctors were told in the emergency room, don't treat your patients, send them home. And when they come back and they can't breathe, then you can treat them. And then they were being intubated, and 8 out of 10 of them died. And this is the world that we were introduced to overnight because of this policy set forth by the CDC. So it is not an accident. It was not because they didn't know what else to do. This was planned out. This is an attack on the free world, the entire free world. And United States, we had to bring us down because we have this thing called the Constitution that stands between us and tyranny. And we need to fight for that. What started out as 5 people in New York City, in Union Square, by the Gandhi statue, is now thousands of people who are marching across the Brooklyn Bridge, who are marching across the United States, who are convoys of trucks across Canada, and convoys of trucks, as we speak, across this country, standing up for liberty. This is not an intellectual pursuit. This is a ground war.
Thank you, Karen.
Let me say, I don't disagree with that. My comment about Fauci is, he's a weird guy because he was never really part of the lockdown crowd. He was more of a traditional infectious disease virologist, I believe. And as far as I know, was never really friendly with the lockdown crowd. But they drafted him into it. And we're talking about all the forces you're talking about. This is big. It's big, and it's very ugly. And there were germ games being played in October, November 2019. All that is true. Look, it's going to take us years to sort this out, and we need to get work. And this is part of what Brownstone's doing. Is we have to investigate this, and we're just at the beginning of this. There's a lot of bad guys out there. Not to mention Bill Gates. Ugh. We could talk about him for an hour. Anyway, go ahead.
My name is Roxana Akhtar, and I currently live in Germany. So I've been dealing with very strict lockdowns and mandates for 2 years. I see an alarming trend now, which I think I'd like to call like the post-pandemic hangover or something. Yeah. So the alarming trend is that among a lot of my friends who used to be advocates for these mandates and lockdowns, that they really favored those things, I see that now every time there's a study coming out which says like, oh, the mask didn't work, or let's say the lockdowns didn't work from Johns Hopkins, or anything relating to vaccine adverse reactions, I see that they're not even curious anymore. They don't want to know. So my question to you is, how do you see this? How do you think we can reverse this? Is it even possible to reverse this?
Well, I don't know, but we have to. This is one of the reasons Brownstone is continuing to post every single day about this topic, and I'm flooded with articles. Everybody else wants us to shut up about it. We're not going to shut up about it. We're not going to stop until we get. Yeah, I'm okay. I never wait for apologies. I would like to have some apologies. But, and nor am I going to wait for justice. I would love to have some justice. It's probably not going to come. But what we need more than anything else right now is the truth. And, you know, that's a minimum requirement as far as I'm concerned.
And we stop censorship.
So that was a perfect segue. I'm Carol Pratt, and I live in Dover. The segue, what I wanted to say to you, Jeffrey, is thank you, because I know you've talked about the Brownstone Institute, and I just want everyone here to know, if you don't already, subscribe to and read their articles, because it's really been for me, a beacon of light and hope and information through this entire thing. I've been voraciously reading everything you publish, and it's really, really wonderful. So thank you.
Well, you know, we've been cited in dozens of court filings around the country, and I'm so grateful for that. And in congressional hearings, you know, if you watch the Ron, you hear it again and again, Brownstone. So our research has been, and I'm so glad about it. You know what? It's a great thing to be effective. I feel good about it.
And also the Great Barrington Declaration, of course. But the question I have for you is, at the end of your speech, you said, we as a nation, as a world, something like that, need to re-embrace liberty or something like that. And I ask you, let's just start here in New Hampshire. So when are you going to move to New Hampshire and start building from here?
Yeah, right? It's a good point. I'm not making much progress in Connecticut, so you know.
Jeffrey, one of the common denominators among all totalitarian movements is that they start with college professors. Is there any way that academia can be saved, or can we have a free society and have Harvard or not?
I know exactly what you mean. But I will tell you my favorite writers for Brownstone, and I'm a severe critic. You know, everything I publish for a reason. Most of them are independent intellectuals. You know, they're not really employed academics who have to comply with deans, and they have their colleagues, and we pay these people to find the truth and tell us the truth. It's where it's not working. Okay, so I have a very special thing I want to say, but I'm going to take this last question here.
All right, thank you. Hi, I'm Jody Underwood. I live in Croydon, New Hampshire. I've been living here. I moved for the Free State Project in 2007. I want to start by asking the audience, how many people live in New Hampshire? Woo! How many people don't? All right. So I want to tell you that our community in New Hampshire was living freely during the last 2 years. Our kids did not wear masks in our social events and so on. Clearly, you know, there were mask requirements and sort of lockdowns. I don't remember ever being locked down.
New Hampshire was one big super spreader event, huh? Yeah.
Except not so much. So really, and so I'm building on what Carol said here, but my question is more direct to you. It's like, when are you moving to New Hampshire?
Oh, wow. You know, nobody's ever asked me that before, you know. I have to think about it. Now, listen, you talk. We've been dancing around a very important topic for the last hour, and I want everybody to realize what's actually happening in this room right now. It's very important. We talked about academics, we've talked about scientists, corruption, about truth and how it can make a real difference. October, I don't know what the exact date was, 2020, 3 great scientists met and hammered out the Great Barrington Declaration. It changed the world. They've experienced enormous slings and arrows, ruin of reputation, but you know, in the end, it's they knew they were right, and I think the world's recognizing it right now. And they didn't have to do that, you know. Most people didn't. Most people just stayed quiet, and they knew what they were facing. You know, just like the people who signed the Declaration of Independence. You know, they knew what was coming. Signers of the Great Barrington Declaration were the same. We need heroes. We need courage. We need people to make those kind of stand up and make those kind of commitments, even at personal expense. One of the signers, in fact, the major drafter of this document, is here in the room with us now. He didn't want me to tell, The man is Martin Kulldorff. I would like us to stand and give him a standing ovation for his great work.